Today we're going to talk about corporate influence on the nation's food supply. And we certainly know way too much about that, Peter, don't we? It's sort of a frightening situation.
Absolutely, Roddy. When you look at how much money is spent on producing processed food in this country, but not only that, marketing that food and making sure that that food is the predominant source of food on our shelves, it really is quite an impressive thing that these corporations together have been allowed to do.
Yeah, and of course we're also talking about corporations like Monsanto. And if you don't know who Monsanto is, tell us about Monsanto.
Well, Monsanto is the largest food and chemical supplier in the world, and they are responsible for much of the biotechnology research that has created genetically modified or GMO food of various types. And we know that they've made significant inroads through the FDA in being able to introduce that kind of food into our food supply. So much so that in many instances we really don't know whether or not a food product is made from a GMO source or not.
Now, actually, I spoke at the Texas Capitol on several occasions on GMO food. I also spoke in several Senate hearings back several years ago. They tried to put GMO under the category of organic because basically what they were saying is, by definition, organic is excluding pesticides and herbicides and chemical poisons and chemical fertilizers. So they wanted to include GMO, and they didn't want us to regulate and put on the packages that this was GMO or genetically modified food, because the manufacturers basically said, well, if you put this is GMO food, then it'll make it look like there's something wrong with the food.
Well, as a matter of fact, there is. Let me give you an example of what we're talking about. There are certain tomatoes. First of all, a normal tomato, when it's grown organically or in your backyard in a pot, if you choose to do so, basically one of the threats to it is a tomato weevil. But the biotechnologists have discovered that if they can splice in a gene that makes the tomato weevil sense that that tomato is actually part of one of its own predators, it's going to leave that tomato alone. The problem is that whenever you do that with any kind of genetically modified organism, you're creating problems with its when it's ingested into the human body. And what I mean by that is that we're biologically created or made to sense when something is truly organic or if it's not. And if you're finding something that is kind of a mixture, if you will, of these substances, the body's immune system senses that as other and starts to attack. And ultimately, it can attack itself, and it can be the root cause of many autoimmune disorders where the body literally starts to destroy itself.
And let me just point out, when you say add these, as opposed to a hybrid, say you're doing a hybrid tomato or a hybrid strawberry, a hybrid is actually breeding one kind of tomato with another kind of tomato. But with genetically engineered, you're taking two different species. So for example, with the strawberry, strawberry has a tendency to have a vulnerability to frost. So what they have done is they have taken it's a fish in the North Atlantic that has a built-in sort of a freon in it. It's got a chemical that keeps it from freezing in North Atlantic waters. So what they've done is take the gene from that fish and they've spliced it in to the genes of the strawberry so that the strawberry is now not vulnerable to frost.
Yep.
Now, as you say, you know, we're sort of creating Frankenstein food, and by doing that, we really do not know how our body's immune system, which genetically has been sort of carried on from ancestor to ancestor to identify friend and foe. Now we're introducing new types of protein configurations in these new foods, and we are concerned, and there is a major concern. I know you in your practice and myself in my practice, I do a lot of allergy testing and food allergy sensitivities, and it is amazing the kinds of food sensitivities that's coming back in these lab reports. I mean, people are suddenly sensitive to lettuce, or food sensitivities to very, very benign, what would be traditionally not considered hyperallergenic foods. They're becoming more sensitive and more allergic to these foods. And so we don't know where this is going to go. And it is big corp, such as companies such as Monsanto and companies like that, that are really pushing the political envelope to make sure that they have the upper hand in the industry.
Absolutely. And that brings up a really good point, because it's not just get the food on the shelf and maybe not reveal the sources that are involved. We're talking about a group of companies that are very active politically in terms of being able to not only make sure that those foods go to market, but also to make sure that nobody who has a contrary point of view about the health of those foods has an opportunity to be able to express that point of view. And you're really talking about what Roddy and I are all about in the political arena, which is freedom of choice of healthcare. And one of the biggest issues in the health freedom of choice arena is this freedom to choose who you go to see for nutritional counseling. Well, as Radia mentioned, she and I share philosophically a point of view that we ought to be using natural foods, foods that are grown organically, and to be able to get the most benefit from those foods, that's what they have to be. Unfortunately, that view isn't shared, and there are some very powerful organizations that are trying to quash dissenting points of view like ours. And one of the front organizations for big food is the American Dietetic Association. For years, they have been engaged in a campaign to establish what they call exclusionary licensure in every state in the union. Now, what does that mean? It means that if you want to get professional nutritional counseling, they want to make sure that the only people that you can go see is a registered dietitian. Now, who's backing that? Well, go to the American Dietetic Association website, Google American Dietetic Association, and look on their sitemap. They've got a corporate sponsorship section out there. And you've got companies like Pepsi, Coke, Kellogg's, Mars Candy. Now think about that for a moment. If they're successful in their campaign, what's that going to mean? It's going to mean that the standard of nutritional advice in this country is going to devolve to, let's get healthy and have a soda and a candy bar.
And guess what, Peter? One of their other corporate sponsors is Soy Joy. Guess who's behind Soy Joy?
Oh, you think?
Monsanto.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to be talking a lot more about the Dietitians Association and a lot more about, you know, corporate influence on the food industry. And we do want to make sure that we hear your comments and your feedback. We look forward to addressing anything that you may have, any questions that you have or comments. Be sure that you sign up to this to this YouTube Psyche Truth, and also visit our website, which is www.texashealthfreedom.com, and go find out what we're all about. If you're not from the state of Texas, that doesn't really matter. Visit our website anyway and see what you may be wanting to look at in your own state. Realize that right now the Dietitians Association has managed to monopolize over 30 states in the United States, and we're going to be talking about a lot more of that in the episodes to come. So stay with us. Thanks, Peter, and we will be back to talk to you more about some exciting topics.
Thanks. See you next time.
Bye-bye.